Okay, we are now live. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the second season of Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live video discussion show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk Alabama football with you, get a little in depth. Out that we've gone live, but so for this week, we're going to review the USC game and talk a little bit about the position we feel the team's in right now, and as we see, and then we're not going to really focus on previewing Western Kentucky, but we will talk about things we might expect to see from Alabama in this game.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, 52-6. That was. I think there were a fair amount of gifts from USC that made it look like far more of an ass kicking than it really was. But there's only so much you can say the score doesn't reflect the game when it was 52-6.
Yeah, I mean the gifts were plentiful. Both Ordarius Stewart touchdowns were just ridiculous gifts.
The long one, I guess the second one, they blitzed the corner and the safety on the same side.
Yeah.
What was that?
Clearly somebody got their signals crossed a little bit on that.
Right.
That was kind of hilariously bad. I guess you give Hurts credit for recognizing that mistake, and on the first one, I mean, the guy pushing him out of bounds and then just letting him go. And I guess, Hurts got the ball out on time and he threw. It was a good throw, but I mean, come on, that's just really, really, really bad. And then Moreland had the easiest pick six you'll ever get. So that's 21 points right there, just gifts.
Yeah. And then the one of Hurts' rushing touchdowns came after the USC's punter just fell on the ball.
Yes, that was a mistake as well. Yeah. But so there's 28 of the 52 points.
Right.
Two long runs from Damian.
Yeah.
I'm in a good position. Which catch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's like the fastest player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like I think everybody, it's fine to laugh at a guy for getting caught from behind twice, but at the same time, I don't think we can really actually criticize Damian for any lack of top end speed because he got caught by freaking Adoree Jackson.
Yeah.
Who's probably the fastest players in college football.
I mean, I don't think Damian has top end speed, but in this in this case right here, there's no shame in getting caught by Adoree. The second one was just unbelievable the way he chased him down. But at least unlike the gifts like the two long touchdowns to Stewart and the punter screwing up and the pick six, at least the two long runs felt kind of like earned yards. They were well-blocked plays. Damian made good cuts, showed off his good footwork, good vision, all of that stuff. So, I mean, those felt like earned yards in a sense that the others really weren't.
Yeah, we didn't see a lot of really sustained drives. It was all just a lot of busts and big plays.
Right. And the first, I mean, I don't think you can sugarcoat it that the first 22 minutes were just absolutely brutal.
Yeah, they were pretty ugly.
I mean, that was that's as bad as we've seen an Alabama team look offensively, right? I mean, maybe going back to the Blake Sims Arkansas game.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the worst since then.
And that at least had the sort of crutch of the weather. Right.
No, they're just. I mean, because they had Derek last year. They just don't have as that reliable, well to go to this year. At least not yet.
Yeah, I guess that's a good opportunity to talk about Damian, who I thought played quite a good game.
Yeah, really impressed. Like you said, maybe not top end speed, but his all of the other, he very much lived up to that sort of Mark Ingram-esque billing that someone put on him. That was to me very much what he reminded me of when I was watching him.
Yeah, I kind of see that too. I really was impressed. Very good vision, footwork. He's very nimble, I think, behind the line of scrimmage, and he showed off some good bursts too on some of those runs, which I thought were impressive
and decisive,
Very
which he wasn't last year. And nimble and elusive in the backfield, I guess, which helped given some of the struggles by the interior of the line. But very, very, very solid on the whole. His performance kind of went a long way for me to alleviating any kind of worry you had about the running back position this year.
Yeah, I agree. Now, as for Bo, what do we think about Bo?
As expected. I mean,
what were you expecting?
I guess we were kind of tempering expectations a little bit on this guy.
Right.
And I think Saban kind of labeled it as his first game, which I think is fair.
Absolutely.
We saw still lacking some of the decisiveness I think we saw with Damian, the nimbleness getting through the hole. We saw a few missed pass blocks. One of them was pretty bad.
One of them was really bad. When that was, I know exactly which one you're talking about. There was like a blitzer coming up the middle, right? And he tried to step up and he just whiffed on him. Yeah.
Well, he along with like two other interior linemen same play.
Yes.
But
that was early, right?
Yeah, it was first quarter.
My theory about the backs, and I guess just looking at this sort of holistically, is that Bo was best Bo was best playing behind an offensive line that is really going to blow people off the ball and create big holes, get him going downhill. Because when he gets going downhill with his combination of size and speed and power and strength, I mean, there's no stopping him. So if you put him behind like the 2012 offensive line or something, I mean, any running back would be great behind that offensive line. But even like, even like 2013 or something or 2014,
right?
Those teams still were blowing people off the ball and creating big holes, and you just get Bo going downhill, and I mean it's like a freight train.
I think he's a player, and we'll talk more about the interior of the offensive line in a bit. I think he's a player that would probably benefit from Shank being back in the middle.
I could see that.
Just because I think Shank is one of their stronger offensive linemen, and you think about if you could get Bo on some of those plays like they would run for Derek last year, where you're maybe running power counter or something like that, and you've got Shank out there leading the way and just kind of blasting people. I think that's an area where Bo could benefit, I guess.
I agree with that. But I see, in terms of what I'm expecting with this group of five, and, in a real sort of zone blocking approach to the running game, and in an offensive line that is going to secure their blocks, and, all the players seem to understand the concepts of the zone blocking, getting to the second level, all that stuff. They did they did a respectable job in that area, but the holes aren't going to be massive, and there's going to be guys, coming into the backfield, and you're going to have to make guys miss like Damian did. And I sort of just, part of me feels like Damian is just better suited for what we're going to get out of this offensive line than Bo is, regardless of the discussion about who's actually a better player.
Also be, because I think the strength of the zone now is the tackles. He's had sort of highlight plays before. I don't know that he really had any on Saturday, but I thought Cam Robinson had a fantastic game. You sort of forgot about him, which is something you generally want to do for an offensive lineman. And aside from a couple of, true freshman mistakes too, that was really impressive. So I don't know, maybe but
I thought that was a very well-deserved Player of the Week honor for Jonah.
Yeah. And before we get away from the running backs, I was a little surprised how much Emmons and Jacobs got into the action.
Yeah, very early, right?
They weren't taking
really
all garbage snaps. I saw Emmons got some work in the first half, and did Jacobs took like the first snap of the second half or something.
Yeah, Jacobs' carry was interesting too because I mean it just stuck out to me because I was like, oh well, this was his first snap, but it was he was like a zone to the left or outside zone and he cut it back way too early. But I mean it's first carry, you know what I mean? But like talented player, clearly there's gonna be a real rotation here with these backs and they will have opportunities. But I think Damian sort of established himself as the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Carter's point about the offensive line is really good too. I think that the tackles are going to be the strongest part here, and then you're going to have to deal with the interior, which I think we're going to discuss a little bit more later. But definitely happy with what I saw from the tackles.
Any other USC review stuff we want? I mean, there's obviously more stuff to talk about, but some of it dovetails into the sort of bigger things that we want to talk about.
On offense, I think let's come back to the stuff on the offensive side later. Defensively, I think we owe the defense just a few words here.
Yeah, that's true. Everything we talked about, everything everyone's talked about, that the speed of this defense was going to be unreal, that it was going to be the fastest defense ever, and warranted. They looked like demons out there on Saturday. They were just so fast and flowing to the ball and hitting big and well generally. It was a phenomenal performance.
Ignoring the superstars, okay, and the superstars are there's a lot of them. There's a lot of superstars. Marlon and Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson and Reuben Foster and John Allen. Ignoring those guys, okay, because obviously they were amazing. Who were we really impressed with as far as they could be starters, but as far as the more role players or lesser known players on the defense go?
Dalvin Tomlinson looked fantastic. I think he is kind of been an underrated part of that defense, and now that he's stepping into a bigger role, he's really getting to show off how good he is. He was splitting double teams all night.
Yes, he was. He had a tremendous game. Mitch, who were you most impressed by?
Yeah, I would say Dalvin and Sean Dion probably would be my other call out. I thought he had a good game. Showed flashes that he could be the guy coming behind Reuben, which is not a point to gloss over either. Reuben kind of proving that he's going to step into that Reggie role pretty nicely.
Reuben looked amazing. That was maybe that I would say. I know we said we're not going to spend much time on the stars, but I would say that was maybe Reuben's best game of his college career.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked fast.
His Ferrari quip was well earned. He was incredibly fast, and he looked comfortable in that that field general role that Alabama's had at middle linebacker for so many years, and the incredible legacy that those guys have created. And it's not automatic. You can't automatically assume that just the next talented guy is going to come in and fill that role and do it well. But it looks like Reuben's doing exactly that.
And Reuben, first of all, I feel like you hear this all the time, like, oh, this guy's in the best shape of his life, or with sports before the season, more with pro sports than college sports. But it's like, oh, this guy lost pounds and he's going to be quicker, or this guy put on good weight, or whatever. With Reuben, the story was, oh, he's down to like 225. Well, I mean, God, he looked fast and lean.
Yeah.
And he certainly has not seemed to have lost any of his strength, but. Also, I feel like the part about Reuben that sometimes gets overlooked is his coverage ability. I mean, he is tremendous in coverage for a linebacker.
And that's where I think there was always the possibility of this, given how much faster he is. But I think Reuben, based on his play on Saturday, is very much going to earn himself a first-round grade this year.
I completely agree.
A middle linebacker with that kind of speed and coverage ability is not common.
No.
Highly prized in the NFL these days.
Yep. Yeah. And so absolutely Reuben. Obviously Hamilton we've already discussed, who I thought looked really fast and really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys want to say a quick word about the superstars? I mean, Marlon, obviously.
Yeah.
Was one, they bracketed Juju, and two, they didn't follow him around, so it wasn't like Marlon locking down Juju the whole night long. But that guy's the best, and he had one catch for 9 yards.
Yeah. And it wasn't against
Marlon. It came out of the backfield. It came out of the backfield.
Yeah, it was not against Marlon. Marlon was targeted once the entire game. It was like a ball down the right side to Juju, and Marlon sort of walled them out of bounds, so that the throw never had a chance to be completed. That was the only time Marlon was targeted all game. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that. I mean, this is like, it kind of reminds me of 2012 when it was like, now this all changed in the national championship for some reason. But up until the national championship against Notre Dame, Milner was not targeted all season. No. I mean, nobody threw at him. They were all throwing it at Dion Blue, game after game after game, or attacking the slots. I mean, Sinceri really sort of got exposed in that area. But the point is that Milner was just, I mean, they just avoided him completely. And I feel like that's exactly what you're going to be looking at with Marlon. They are just going to avoid him, and they're going to try to attack everybody else.
One of those guys who just erases half of the field, basically.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to get to the other corner later, but I do think, though, that Marlon deserves some credit. And, God, he is physical, too.
He's the absolute physical prototype at corner, 6'1", 200 pounds, something like that. Like, his technique is like, there's just
what was it like?
There's a very real.
What was it like, the third or fourth offensive play of the game for USC when they strung that run out wide and Marlon just came up flying out of nowhere? Oh my god!
It's insane for a guy with his coverage ability to also be that good in run support. I mean, that's just absurd.
He has a chance to be the best corner that we've seen here under Saban, I think.
Yeah. Pretty easily, I would say.
And he's also gone after this year.
Oh yeah. He should. He needs to get the hell out. Get that paper, man.
Enjoy. I want everybody to enjoy what's hopefully 14 more games of Marlon, and then that's it. So and then the other, I guess, just quickly still on USC, John Allen deserves a little bit of a shout out too, because he was a monster.
Yeah,
he was a monster.
Picked up exactly where he left off last year. I still sort of can't believe that he came back.
Yeah, Pro Football Focus had that graded as his as the best performance of his career, which I could kind of say. I mean, he was just in the backfield the entire night. Ryan Anderson was great. The defense was great. I mean, you could talk a whole lot about it. Clearly, USC was overmatched starting the guy at quarterback with his first career start, but and definitely what hurt them was not having their left tackle, but. It was an amazing defensive performance.
There was something about their other tackle, Zach Banner, the guy who's the giant one. Last year, Pro Football Focus said that he gave up like 1 sack and 4 hurries and blah, blah, blah. And then on Saturday when he was Ryan Anderson, he gave up like 1 sack. Like basically all of the pressures that he gave up last year, he gave up mostly against Ryan Anderson on Saturday.
Yeah. The defense is good. The defense is really good. They got a lot of good players. We don't really need to break that down for you guys because, like, I think you can sort of see it that they're great. I mean, we could get into a more schematic discussion, I guess, but that's probably for another time.
Right.
Very impressive defensive performances, I guess, where we'll leave it.
Okay. Well, so we thought it would be more interesting. Just sort of heap praise on this team to actually talk about the issues that we see, and we kind of have 4 of those that we wanted to talk about. Which one do we want to start with?
Well, let's stay on the defensive side of the ball and deal with what I think is the most minor of the 4 issues. It's all relative, but I think that this has a chance to be corrected pretty easily, which is the defensive line depth.
Yeah. Obviously, the top guys on the defensive line, and you can sort of throw in the outside linebackers for that as well. But the guys that they play are very, very, very good.
Yes.
But and I think it's important to emphasize that it's not like they've got nobody up there. they don't have the insane depth that they did last year.
Well, the starting four are as good as any team in the country, probably better than any team in the country. I mean, John Allen,
yes.
Dalvin Tomlinson, Deron Payne, and Deshaun Hand. I mean, I take them with anybody, of course.
Yep.
But look, they basically were the only guys that played when the game was still in the balance. Dakota Ball maybe got a snap or two. I don't think Frazier saw the field. So you're talking about a legit four-man rotation. Well, I can't tell you the last time that Alabama had a legit four-man rotation. It's always been five or more. And that's, that was not an issue then against USC, which obviously was off the field pretty quickly in most of their offensive series, and Alabama didn't have to play a full 60 minutes against them. But in a week and a day, when it's going to be a full 60-minute game and that's going to be a battle, Alabama is supposed to be the team that's supposed to lean on you in the fourth quarter, right? They're supposed to wear you down.
Yeah.
Well, four defensive linemen kind of puts a pin in that a little bit.
Yeah. And Saban made this point, I guess, earlier in the week about that as big guys get tired, it's not really just a series and then they're back and they're playing at full strength again. His analogy was like, well, when their gas tank runs out, it doesn't get refilled till Sunday, as opposed to the smaller guys. So the thing that they're really going to have to hope for this season against better offenses is that they can use all that talent and ability and just get teams off of, not let teams sustain any drives at all. And also they have to hope that the offense can string together some drives and stay on the field and give them breaks so they don't get worn out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I throw this to Mitch though. So who are we looking at, do you think, as far as the guys? Because, at least a fifth guy, maybe even a sixth guy. I mean, so who do we want to keep our eyes on going forward as far as who's going to fill this depth and who's going to be that guy who's going to come in and play a couple series here and there to give the big guys a breather?
Well, the obvious one is Raekwon coming in off of with his eligibility now. I guess we're not really sure what we're going to get from him, but the hope is that he's the fifth guy. I wouldn't be surprised if Dakota had a role as kind of a fifth or sixth guy, but I think it's Raekwon.
And I think, but Frazier also, though, right? I mean, he was the guy who I was thinking was going to be the fifth guy.
But why? I guess I was kind of surprised to not see him on Saturday.
I was surprised too. I mean, I don't necessarily think that Dakota Ball playing a snap or two is in any indication that he's necessarily ahead of Frazier on the depth chart. But so that could just be circumstance. But at the same time, I was surprised too. I mean, it really seemed like the plan was just to play four.
Yeah. I'm going to look up. There was a practice report this week, and it was talking about which defensive linemen were on the scout team. And there was a name on there it was either.
I think it was Frazier. Oh, O.J. Smith. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Smith, but it might have been Frazier, and that would be weird.
Yeah. While Carter looks that up, the one thing that I will say about the defensive line, which is a positive for them as far as these four, is that these four guys are very versatile. John Allen can play almost any technique. Deshaun Hand can be moved around, so can Dalvin. Of the four guys, the only one that's sort of limited as far as what roles he can play along the defensive line is Deron Payne. So that gives them a little bit of an advantage in terms of the fact that basically any three of those guys can play together because you can move them all over the place. But it still doesn't sort of solve the issue of really just needing that fifth body, that fifth playable guy.
Well, and that's another point with Raekwon. I think that he's another guy that I think you can move around a bit too. When we were talking about
he's practiced at both. Yeah, he's practiced at both end and tackle. I know.
Yeah, and defensive line is a position where as a freshman, you can sort of step in even if you weren't here in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, look at Deron last year.
Look at Ashawn Robinson in 2013. Mm-hmm. I think he wasn't here in the spring, right? And he just showed up and he was playing huge snaps against Texas A&M, second game of the season. And John Allen, I mean, he was here, and I think he was an early enrollee, but he was also playing big snaps right away. So, I mean, it's a situation where you can step in and you can play defensive line. and you can make an impact immediately as somebody without a lot of experience. So.
Now, I wouldn't expect Raekwon to make. I think Saban pretty much said that it's pretty doubtful that they'll have him ready to play this weekend. But if he's going to have a role, I think you could there's a very real possibility that he sees the field against Ole Miss.
Yeah, but again, though, then that's his first game. That's a hell of a first test.
Right.
It's sort of the situation maybe with the defensive line where it's like, well, okay, you look at the next 4 games, and only one of the next 4 games is going to be competitive. And I think I think this is sort of going to be a theme as we talk about the areas in which we need to see this team improve, that you have these 4 games, just find a way to survive Ole Miss. And then following that Kentucky game, I can't remember who's coming up after Kentucky. Maybe it's Texas A&M or Arkansas.
Arkansas, Tennessee, I think.
Yeah, it's Arkansas and then Tennessee, because Tennessee is actually on the 3rd Saturday in October this year.
That's right, the 15th. So I think the idea is really just you've got these 4 games. Find a way to survive Ole Miss, and then be a different team by the time the second week in October rolls around and the schedule starts for real. So one of those, in terms of dovetailing it with this very specific conversation, Raekwon, whatever experience he needs to get, or Dakota Ball or whatever, just get them ready for that game then, for when the schedule really turns. And,
Yeah, they really need to have a 5th guy by the time mid-October, and hopefully a 6th also. That would, more is better. But at least one more guy has got to step up by the time they hit the meat of the schedule.
Right. The other thing maybe is that, you could maybe start going with some more. I mean, if they think like Anthony Jennings is a guy, okay, that's going to make an impact, maybe, you play him and Ryan together. Which they did on Saturday. Right. They played him and Ryan together, but they did it with an odd front, right? They did it, that's their base 3-4. So I'm saying, like, let's say you're still in nickel, okay? And let's say you're still in nickel. This way you can only – I'm trying to look for ways where you can only maybe play 2 defensive linemen at once. Yeah. So, like a little sort of like 2-4-5 formation. So that's just a thought. Or get Tim on the field, you know what I mean? Now – I will say one quick word. I don't think that Tim was very impressive on standard downs on the few that he got to play. No. He lost his balance a few times. He got turned around, pushed out of the play. So there's still a ways to go there. But still, though, just looking for ways in which they can maybe limit the snaps for some of the defensive linemen, and playing only 2 at a time is, a potential way to do that. Yeah. And Jennings is a guy I think that they can obviously he had a really good spring, and, there was some talk about him coming in, and we were wondering, who's going to be that other outside linebacker. Well, question answered. And he's listed at like 270 pounds. So he's a big dude. He is a big dude. And so he's someone that maybe they can rely on to be sort of a quasi lineman, and sort of, when they want to get the true lineman fewer snaps, but you still want to keep a little bulk on the field, I guess. He's a guy that can sort of be an option there. Yep. So it's just interesting to see. Obviously, I guess to sum it up, Raekwon is the guy that we're very excited about, but with some of these guys, and Bo was a great example, the hype tends to sometimes exceed reality, and I would caution people expecting him to be the savior here as being that 5th guy, but it's very possible that by the time the meat of the schedule rolls around in October, that he is that 5th guy. So something to watch for. Yeah. And I guess the other defensive issue that we wanted to talk about is cornerback. Anthony Averett did not have a great game. I don't think he played well at all. That's just sort of I don't mean to be harsh, but I just thought he got targeted a few times. They really threw the ball very little, okay? And when they threw the ball, they very rarely had time. So as far as like legit throws that had chances to be complete to wide receivers, there were very few of them. And on a number of occasions, Averett was sort of putting himself in a very, very bad position. Yeah. And, I think it's fair to point out that it was his, like, first real game action. Sure. So, Marlon didn't exactly look like All-American best Nick Saban corner in his first action last year. That's a little, I know, that's a little different though, right? I mean, we sort of knew what sort of player Marlon was. Averett sort of won this job kind of by default. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. People transferred, people left, people are suspended. I mean, think about how much it took for Averett to, be this guy right? I mean, you have people leaving this program in all sorts of different ways to make him that guy. So,
I mean, he was in competition for the job before.
Yeah,
all
but the
that
fact
happened.
that like Maiden is even getting first team snaps, you know what I mean, at some point during camp, and I think that really shows you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, like, coupled when you take the clearly Averett was a concern for us going in, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And clearly we think that his ability is somewhat limited. Okay.
Yeah.
And then to see the way he played, you know, getting beat pretty badly twice on deep balls. He was totally lost at one point on a little slant, which really was not the most impressive move by a wide receiver on his release. And Averett just got completely turned around and lost the guy. He gave up a nice catch for like 8 yards in front of him in the first quarter. So it just, you know, it seemed like every time he was targeted, something not so great was about to transpire.
So I guess the question there is, I mean, unless you presume that one of the freshmen is going to come up and take the job from him, which I don't think is terribly likely at this point. How do you help him out, basically? And I don't know. I think I think this team is going to be able to play a lot of cover two, a lot of kind of split safety coverage, which will help out. I think as much as you can, you probably want to roll Eddie toward his side to get your best cover safety over your weakest cover corner. And also just hope that the pass rush gets home or gets close often enough that that weakness doesn't cost them, I guess.
As far as what he's surrounded by, you know, you can't ask to be in a better situation.
Right.
You've got maybe the best pass rush in the country, okay, to take some pressure off you. You've got maybe the best or one of the 5 best cover corners opposite you in the country, you know, to allow some pressure off you. You've got some of the best defensive coaches in the history of organized football to help you in terms of putting you in a good position to succeed. So everything around him, there's no better environment for success than the environment that he's in, but it still sort of comes down to talent and ability, right? And, you know, look, 8 days from now, that's a pretty good quarterback that they're going to face with some pretty good wide receivers. And if I'm Ole Miss, especially considering how great Alabama is at basically every other place defensively, I'm taking so many shots downfield against 28.
Yeah. I mean, it's really your only strategy against them at this point, especially when you're a team like Ole Miss that can't really run the ball at all.
Right.
You know, I do think there's still maybe some question about how this defense would hold up if you just really tried to ram it down the gut against them and you had the talent to try it. But Ole Miss is not that team.
No.
They can't do that. So, you know, I'd be shocked if Hugh Freeze isn't looking at the tape already and saying, this is where we're going.
Yeah.
That's a game you have to get through. And if you get through that game, then maybe reinforcements arrive with Tony later in the season as well.
Yeah.
So
deploying coverage, I think, in order to sort of roll coverage that way toward Marlin, you know, play a lot of split safeties, or when you play sort of when you sort of split the field in thirds and play like cover 1 or cover 3, you know, roll the safety away from Averett, or away or toward Averett. The other idea that I had, and you know, I'm curious what you guys think about this. There's part of me that just wants to keep Minkah outside.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I understand that Minkah is very good at star. I get that. And I understand that that's not the easiest position. And he's got experience there, and he's talented, and it's great. But, you know, teams don't hit home run plays out of the slot. You know, teams hit home run plays attacking the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Or you know, we're throwing deep post, but you're not throwing you down the middle, but you're not throwing that to your slot receiver. So part of me thinks, okay, keep Minkah outside. Let's make sure that the top doesn't get taken off this defense, and put someone else inside. Now, maybe that hurts you a little bit in run support, or maybe that hurts you a little bit in your underneath coverage. But it's not the sort of move that's going to result in giving up huge plays. And with this defense, with how great they are, you know, how I assume how great they are at creating takeaways and, you know, forcing the defense to get every yard possible against you and not be able to score on a big play is pretty valuable.
Yeah. And, there's something like, I guess to go along with that, the thing about outside corner is that a lot of times it's just you. That's right. And the rest of the team can be really good, but if you don't do your job on the outside, then it's a big play.
And that's a great point. Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
So if you have a guy on the inside, I don't know if Averett's practiced at Star or anything like that, but if you have your guy Minka from inside to outside, and yes, you're giving something up on the inside, but on the inside there's help,
right? And
a lot of times there's not on the
exactly
outside.
There's just so many more bodies on the inside.
Yeah.
Look, we knew what USC's strategy was going to be. It was going to be to attack Averett deep. I mean, everybody knew that, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, okay, Alabama knows that too, okay? Nick Saban, Jeremy Pruitt, I mean, they know that as well. And yet, still, literally the second play of the entire season is a deep shot to Averett, okay? And he's out there by himself. Because sometimes there's only so many things you can do to protect a guy in that position. Right? So it's like you can come up with all the schematic adjustments that you want. You can have all the talent around you. But if that quarterback has time, he's going to have opportunities to hit 9 routes against the guy playing corner on the outside. I mean, that's just how football works. There's only so much you can do. So I think Carter's right in that you can't hide this guy. You cannot hide him. So if he's not going to be able to cut it out there, then I think you got to put Minka out there and just take your chances with, even if it's not Averett in the slot, maybe it's Carter, or maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, again, it could just be one game. Mitch was talking about just get through this game and then reinforcements arrive with Tony, but
because we know Tony can play star at the very Tony least, he can play star.
Yeah, or he can play outside too.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean,
Tony, I was hoping to see, I guess, Minka in more downfield coverage. I can only remember the one underthrown ball that ended up in the interference.
Yeah, the little corner route out of the slot. I mean, or wheel route, but I mean.
Yeah. So I feel like it's still kind of an unknown with Minka.
I agree. No, I think that's a good point. Whether or not Minka can play the ball effectively in the air is sort of a remains to be seen situation, but I'd still sort of take my chances more with him, right, than with Averett.
Because I guess, again, since it's a one-game thing, you look at Ole Miss, they're not a team that's going to beat you too much run. I mean, you probably want Ole Miss trying to beat you running inside.
Yes.
Right.
So moving Minka outside and bringing in whoever it is at Star, Shaheem or, Averett.
Yeah. The flip side to that, of course, though, is that if you want to look at the Ole Miss game specifically, this against those spread offenses, the star position is really so important, not just in pass coverage, but in run support and in terms of like run blitz and pass and passing and pass blitz. And Alabama loves to use that guy in all sorts of different ways. So that's a very important position there. So I want to say that I fully expect Minka to play star against Ole Miss, and I completely understand why that's going to be the case. It's just Averett's just going to have to play better. Is how it's going to. That's just probably just the upshot here, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, and we will now move to the offensive side of the ball. I guess we did a little bit of talking about this before, but so. The concern there is the interior of the offensive line, which was, I'll say, inconsistent on Saturday. They had some good plays, but they also had plenty of bad ones. And, now Shank is unsuspended. Shank's not going to start on Saturday. Saban said that, but I think he did say that they want him to play on Saturday. If he ends up taking a job back, where does he go? I mean, obviously he plays right guard, I guess, but
yeah, I honestly don't know. I know we're musing a little bit about this before the show. I do not want Cotton out of this lineup.
Yeah.
he has a lot of potential, very talented. He made some mistakes, but he also made some really nice plays on Saturday, and I do not want to see him pulled. That's kind of a non-starter for me, to be honest.
Yeah. But then, your options are, they obviously seem to like Bozeman a lot. And, he had some, I guess, on Saturday, but, you're replacing Ryan Kelly, who's,
right.
Was a first rounder at center. So you expect there to be a little bit of drop off, I guess. But then, Pcwr is a returning starter, and obviously they feel like he's one of the best guys as well. So I just, as much as I would like to see Shank back in the lineup, just, even just from a sort of personal standpoint, because, he's a fifth-year senior, I have no idea where he goes.
Yeah. I don't know. What did we think of Bozeman on Saturday? I mean, he had trouble. He had trouble more than once with somebody playing over his nose. I mean, he got blown back, more than a few times. Bozeman is versatile, and he obviously knows the offense well, but he's pretty limited.
Yeah, I think he's, to me, obviously the least talented player on the line.
If Pcwr can play center, we'll see what happens on Saturday or tomorrow, I should say. But if Pcwr can play center, that's the caveat, right? If Pcwr got moved off center because he really can't cut it at center, then this is the 5.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah.
But if Pcwr can play center, that sort of unlocks some possibilities here as far as moving him to center and then getting Shank back in the lineup.
Because that's what it was at fall camp, most of fall camp, right?
Well, it was Pcwr at center, but it wasn't.
Yeah, Shank wasn't. Shank wasn't first team. Yeah,
but that's kind of what I was wondering, if that's why it switched right at the end. If they were throughout camp kind of expecting Pcwr to be center, with Shank eventually moving into right guard, but then they switched at USC week because Shank's not going to play.
That's right, and if that's the case, then obviously, I think the move is probably Pcwr to center and Shank in at right guard. Yeah. But we don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, and that to me is probably your best 5, but
I agree with that. That is disregarding position concerns. That is your best 5.
Yeah.
What I will say about all of these guys, they understand the zone scheme very well. I thought they doubled when it was appropriate. I thought they got to the second level when it was appropriate. I thought for the most part the timing was pretty good. I thought O.J. Howard has been helping out a lot with blocking.
Yeah, he looked really good as a blocker on Saturday.
Yeah, he's become a very valuable bonus big. So, there's an understanding of the scheme, and so that's part of it, okay? But you got a couple guys who are kind of limited. You got 2 guys who are kind of limited in Bozeman and Pcwr, and then you've got 1 guy who's obviously very inexperienced in Cotton. So it's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, and I know we're not previewing that Ole Miss game, but that Ole Miss defensive line, though,
looked really good.
You would think, man, they lose Kemdichi and they lose C.J. Johnson, and you would think they take a step back. They ain't taking no steps back.
No. Okay, and so our final one is the one that everyone wants to talk about: quarterbacks. I think the first thing I want to do is sort of pump the brakes a little bit on the Jalen Hurts hype train.
Yes.
Because I will start by complimenting him, and I think the thing that you need to compliment most of all with him is the poise.
Okay.
For a kid, he turned 18 in August, to come out there and fumble on his first play with all of the external factors that are going on there. And then to come back and just, the kid was was as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
It was incredible how just unflappable he was. And that's a huge thing. And when you combine that with the fact that he has apparently what everyone is saying is that it's sort of the team is behind this kid. That's not a minor thing. If the staff really feels like more than anything that he is the guy they trust to sort of be dependable, then it's hard to see him not winning the job, basically. But at the same time, like he looked like a freshman out there. The playbook was very limited. The interception was an awful decision.
So bad. It was so bad.
Both of his touchdown throws were easy and accounted for like 110 of his 118 passing yards.
Right.
Obviously, he looked pretty good as a runner. But, like we talked about at the beginning, USC gave him a lot of gifts. The offense was not, just a juggernaut with Hurts out there, even though they scored a whole bunch of points. So I think when you combine that with, and I like, obviously Barnett came in a very easy situation. He's up 38-6. But he played really well.
Yeah, he did.
When he went back in there. He was like 3 of 3 for 97 yards or something like that.
With some good throws, too. I mean,
Yeah,
the throw to OJ up the seam was a great throw, and he did a great job to move the safety with his eyes. And, the touchdown to Dieter was really nice.
Yeah. So I think this is still way more of a battle than a lot of people realize right now.
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like Alabama can win with either of these guys. This is not the worst quarterback battle to have.
No.
Very much still a battle, I think.
I think I want to say that, like, obviously, like, I'm not trying to be hard on the kid. It's his first start. Like Carter said, he just turned 18. I mean, he's young, and this is just like, what are you going to expect, right? He's not going to go out there and he's not going to be Jameis Winston, okay, on day one.
Yeah.
But the context of this conversation, okay, is whether this guy in 8 days can win a game in Oxford.
Yeah.
So there's some immediacy here in terms of you can't just say, well, it was his first game and he's young and he'll get better. Well, he's got to get better fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I will say that I heard through the grapevine, there was a story going around that he barely got any first team reps.
Okay.
Up to USC, like he was pretty much with the second teamers the entire time, and now this week it's been I don't know. Like I heard that story, and I just why if they were planning to bring him in on the third series of the game and play with the starters, which is what Saban said.
Right.
Why would they do that? I don't understand why you wouldn't be getting him those reps. So, take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But, we'll see.
What I'm curious, let's just do this just to sort of go around and put some numbers on these. Let's go around and grade Hurts. Taking everything into account. And not giving him, like, not sort of grading this on a curve because it was his first start. Let's just grade his start like you'd grade any other college quarterback.
B?
Yeah, if we're doing plus or minuses, B minus, C plus.
C plus is where I would go. He needs to do the simple things right. Okay, a lot of times that's the most important thing. He needs to do the simple things right. Now, obviously, that means don't throw an atrocious pick on third down. Yeah. It also means, when you're in an RPO, and there's going to be a lot of RPOs this year, and they got numbers in the box, you got to throw the screen out wide and try to let your receivers make plays.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that enough. Okay, he stuck with he stuck with the easy call, the run call, way too often. So he's got to. I mean, these are just very simple things that you need to do if you're going to win. If you're going to win games. I don't. the offense did not really move the ball all that well with him in.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a concern. You know, they hit big plays. There is a possibility, okay, that they go in. And if they go in with him in Oxford, I could see a scenario where the offense doesn't move the ball at all.
Yeah, and there was no intermediate passing game.
None,
None
absolutely
whatsoever.
nothing. And that's what we were thinking. You know, we were hoping like Calvin in the slot, you know, freeing him up with a whole different series of underneath routes, getting the ball in his hands. I mean, there was nothing.
Yeah, I would just, in his defense a little bit though, Saban talked about they gave him kind of a menu of plays to kind of work from. I do wonder how many. I mean, you know, were there even intermediate passing plays really in? I think we saw one attempted.
Well, now that's true. Now maybe it wasn't, but there, whether or not it was there, whether or not that wasn't there because they didn't even try or because they didn't feel he could do it or whatever. I mean, fact of the matter is that there was no intermediate passing game.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what matters, right? Now, if you're saying that there was no intermediate passing game this game, but that doesn't preclude it from happening in the future, then I agree. But, you know, I don't know. I just don't know if he can do that right now. And that's not an easy thing to do. You know what I mean? To drop back and read coverages and make throws.
It's a whole lot easier to, you know, to hand the ball off, to run it yourself, to throw a screen off an RPO, or to chuck the ball deep, especially when the defense is just giving you the throw. But reading a defense and throwing against with like a full route tree and combos and everything like that, and putting the ball where it needs to go, you know, between 8 and 20 yards down the field is one of the hardest things a quarterback has to do. And I just, I don't know how reasonable it is to expect a freshman quarterback to be able to do that.
You know, the thing about it is that I really do believe that if Alabama is going to win a national championship this year, or let's start by saying win the SEC, the quarterback is going to have to win some games this year in a way that the quarterback didn't have to win games last year. I mean, Jay Coger did not have to win games last year. He made some big throws in some big spots, namely the Tennessee game. But with Ryan Kelly and Derrick Henry, it was very different. You know, so you need – now, if it could have Hurts, I mean, my vision for a Hurts offense, spread the field, one read. If it's not there, tell them to tuck it and run.
Yeah. Could
you win with that?
Maybe. I mean, this defense is so good, it's going to cover up a lot of offensive warts. And it's not like there isn't talent around him, but it worries me a little bit, the thought of trying to get through this schedule with that kind of offense.
And I will say also, as far as like how do you use Hurts' strengths, I know we've talked about this. I'm not expecting the zone read to be a real factor this year.
No.
And I'm not just saying that because I'm not just saying that because of the first play, which was obviously a disaster. But I was talking about the zone read on Twitter and about how not to expect much, and somebody tweeted at me, which I think was a great point. The zone read, more than maybe anything, it's hard to dabble in it. You know, effectively running a zone read, you know, game in and game out requires real dedication to that type of play.
I mean, because it's a true option run play. I mean, it's like you don't dabble in the speed option.
No.
I mean, there are teams that sprinkle it into their playbooks occasionally. You don't dabble in, you know, running the true, like, veer triple option out of flex bone for it. You don't just do that randomly. And the zone read is that type of play. It was invented in like the 90s, but it's a modern version of option football. Yeah. And that's not something that teams just do at the drop of a hat.
And you've got a whole bunch of players that playing together, you're throwing a whole bunch of players together that haven't played together, you know, and zone read requires chemistry and familiarity and all of that stuff. And now you've got a new center, you've got a new quarterback, you've got a new running back, you've got a whole bunch of guys who have never played together.
Yeah.
I just don't think that that's going to happen. That doesn't mean that Hurts is not going to be a factor with his legs. I think you're going to see a lot of design runs.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot of design runs. I think you're going to see, especially, design run, if teams are going to stack the box against Alabama, design quarterback run gives you the added benefit of sort of evening the numbers out, because now all of a sudden your running back can be a blocker too. Mm-hmm. And obviously Hurts is going to make plays on broken plays with his legs.
Yeah.
But as far as like incorporating the zone read, not expecting that, not at all.
Right.
Barnett, I guess the only thing that I got to say about Barnett is that I loved what I saw when he came in late in the game. But if his issue early in the game was that he's nervous,
yeah,
it could, again, first start, first college game ever playing. I mean, redshirted last year. That doesn't mean that that's going to be a recurring issue. But if it is a recurring issue, that's something to be. I mean, it's not going to get easier.
Like
as far as like where your nerves are going to be, and how they're going to impact you.
Like as good as he looked when he came back in. I mean, he still didn't throw the ball all that much. As good as he looked when he did it, and he came back in with a very big cushion. It's worrisome to have a guy get pulled because of nerves. It
really is. And think about the big road games that Alabama's playing this year.
Yep.
Okay? I mean, you're going in to Oxford, and you're going into Fayetteville, and you're going into Knoxville, and you're going into Red Stick, okay? I mean, this is like, baptism by fire for a young quarterback playing that sort of schedule. And if nerves are at all going to be a concern, that has like disaster written all over it.
Right.
Let me ask this: do we expect to go into Oxford with one or two QBs?
I think that is. It's funny. I was literally about to pose the question. Because that's all. I mean, that's. Yeah. I mean, I have no idea. They're both going to play. If we start sort of just narrower here, they're obviously both going to play this weekend. We're expecting maybe close to equal time.
I think that's the most likely scenario. If it's unequal time, then I think you have to assume that the guy getting the bulk of the snaps is the one they think is the guy. Maybe he stood out in practice or whatever. But I think at this point, it's far more likely that they'll get even. I think this game is a lot more critical than people realize, because
right.
To me, it would be shocking to me if they roll into Oxford with still two guys.
Well, right, and the other thing which is interesting is some lessons have to be learned from last year. Okay, which in this exact same game was kind of a disaster as far as uncertainty around the quarterback position.
Yep.
The problem, though, is that you had experience last year, even if Coker wasn't playing that much, in the past. He was fifth-year senior and all of that. I just don't know. I don't know who it's going to be, and I don't really know how you choose.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't, I got to tell you guys, okay, I don't have a feel one way or the other. I mean, I'm 50-50 on the quarterbacks.
I honestly have no clue.
I don't know what I want. I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't know what I want.
My ideal vision for this offense, and again, not foreclosing the possibility that the playbook could open up more and more with Hurts as the year goes on, but my ideal vision for this offense is a lot more like the one we saw with Barnett on Saturday.
Sure. Yeah.
But as far as the reality of who's going to be better, who I expect to be better, who I want, I have no idea. I think I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, because I'm hoping that we can learn a lot from it as far as the quarterbacks go. Sort of a side point to be made about tomorrow. This is a good game, I feel like, and really more on the defensive side of the ball. But Western Kentucky they're a group of 5 team. They're not going to beat Alabama unless Alabama just plays, unless Alabama plays its worst game since 2007 under Nick Saban.
Yeah.
But they're a very good Group of 5 team. And they are going to test the secondary a lot. I think we're going to have probably going to have a lot of questions about Anthony Averett answered tomorrow, I think. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how things go with the quarterbacks tomorrow, because I think that's going to give us a lot of answers.
I did want to say, as anxious as we are about this, there is maybe the silver lining with not knowing who the quarterback is the other team may not know who the quarterback is either.
I'll say that if they're going to narrow it down, sorry for interrupting, but I'll say that if they're going to narrow it down and it's not like obvious based on like one just blows the other out of the water, do not expect to see a starter named before they go into Oxford.
Right.
If Nick Saban wanted to keep Clay Helton and that team off balance, then he wants to do that to Hugh Freeze. So I would not expect to see, as much as I'm hoping to learn just by watching them tomorrow, I do not expect Nick Saban to come out and be like, well, that guy played better, so he's going to be the starter now.
Right. And I also don't want to full on advocate for a 2-quarterback system, but I do think it can have its advantages. One of them being.
You think that can work? You think
that it can work? Yeah.
You think that they can win games against big teams in tough environments with playing 2 quarterbacks?
Yeah.
If both guys buy in, which is a whole lot easier to say than it is for them to actually do it, and completely understandably so, it's possible.
I just feel like it's so important for the quarterback to be like in the rhythm of the game. You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like,
I mean, I'm not, and certainly we're not talking Gus Malzahn.
Right. Well,
yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah. And I'm not advocating for it.
No, I know. But I don't mean to scoff at the idea either. I'm just a very big believer in one quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I want to hear, though, if we have just a few minutes, I do want to hear like why you think it could work.
Well,
I mean,
okay. Well, I mentioned one of them. I mean, if you have a guy like Jalen and Blake, and you're giving them menus per se before each game, I mean, I think you work on giving them different menus for each game. So during any given game, you don't know, not only does the defense not know who's even going to be the quarterback on the next drive, they don't know, what kind of plays that quarterback might be running. I mean, if you can also set up tendencies with each one that you can then break during important times. And as well as we mentioned earlier,
they're both capable enough runners and passers that you don't have to have one guy, one guy be to be a little more 2016, one guy be your Shane Buechele and one guy be your Tyrone Swoops.
and also I don't know how this would play out, but if one of these guys does become the guy, what happens to the other guy? But if you somehow manage a system where both of them are playing, maybe you don't have to lose one or the other as well. But most of the point has to do with both of these guys can do a little bit of running and passing. So I'm not advocating for a quarterback system where Jalen is the running quarterback and Blake's kind of the passing quarterback. I think part of the reason it could work is they can do both.
Right. But I guess here's my sort of point about the 2-quarterback system. Okay. Let's say Jalen starts the game. Okay. Mm-hmm. And let's say he plays pretty well on the first 2 series. And then your plan tentatively was to bring Barnett in for the 3rd series. Mm-hmm. Well, if Jalen's playing well, I don't want to pull him. Like, I don't want him off the field.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how you.
Right. I don't know how you make the decision when to move, when to make these changes. I mean, how do you do that? Is it a simple? Is it really like a plan that's set in stone, or is it reactionary to how they're playing? You know what I mean?
It can't be reactionary. I mean, if your plan is to use a 2-quarterback system, it can't be reactionary.
I agree, but how do you do that?
Yeah.
But then how do you do that? If they go and they move the ball on the first 2 drives with Hurts, how do you pull him?
I mean, I don't know. You have to have a plan for it. I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm not getting paid to make this decision.
That is not an enviable position to have to make.
Yeah, no.
I would never know.
Because what do you do if if one guy and what if it's the opposite? What if one guy goes out there and is just deer in headlights and is throwing picks all over the place? You can't keep bringing him back in, right?
Right, exactly.
But then you're going to destroy his confidence when you yank him after a pick. And I just I don't know. That's my main hesitancy. I'm not nearly as opposed to it as I would have been in years past. I don't know how you make that decision. I don't know how you design a system that rotates them in properly.
And Mitch, I know this wasn't what you were saying necessarily, but I don't just want to say, well, okay, well, we're just going to leave it to Lane and Saban to figure this out, because it's very possible that, yes, we're not the ones that are paid to make the decision, and yes, we don't have all the answers, but it's also very possible that this is just a question without a good answer.
Yeah.
And that even guys as good as those two are not really going to be able to manage this in a way that's going to be sort of conducive to a lot of offensive success for this team. Mm-hmm. I just don't know. Now maybe that's not the case. Okay, I'm not saying.
I will say, didn't Saban use two quarterbacks in at least one of his years at LSU? Didn't he use multiple quarterbacks in their national championship year? So in 2007. I tried to look into that,
Well, that's interesting. Now in 2007, okay, when they won it, but that was with Les, they used Flynn and Perilou, right?
Yeah.
So
how did they use Perilou?
I don't know. That's the thing.
I know he played the SEC championship game.
The whole game.
Flynn was hurt. Flynn was hurt.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Who were the quarterbacks even in 2003?
Matt Mock was like the main guy, and then I honestly can't even remember the other guy's name.
I mean, Rohan Davey wasn't there anymore, right?
I don't think so.
That's interesting. I didn't know that he.
So we're thinking it was 2003.
I tried to look into
2003.
That, but I just the information was scarce. Now watch, Mitch is gonna pull it up right here. Oh yeah, they rotated these guys.
Marcus Randall, Jamarcus Russell, Flynn, and Matt Mock were all on that roster.
Wow, Flynn was on that roster?
Yeah.
Must have been his true freshman year, I guess.
4, 5, 6. Was Jamarcus redshirted that? He was probably redshirted that year.
I think so. It doesn't really give me any more information, but
the Randall kid rings a bell too.
Marcus Randall, yeah.
Maybe he.
I think it was him because Flynn and Russell would have been freshmen.
Randall was the guy that threw the bluegrass miracle touchdown.
I thought that was Davey. That was Randall?
That's what his Wikipedia says.
Okay. Well,
don't quote me on it, but
I'm not going to disagree with that.
And was that game in 2003?
That was 2002. So that makes me think that he was the guy in 2003, though.
Okay, then that's.
But I know that Matt Mock,
Well, then those are your two guys.
Yeah, I think it was those two guys. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say.
I have no idea how that worked. I have no idea.
Yeah, I just want to say really quick that I've lived my entire life thinking that Rohan Davey threw the bluegrass miracle pass. This is kind of a traumatic experience for me because I feel like my whole worldview just got turned upside down. But
yeah,
maybe that's something to look into though. It probably was Randall. It probably was Randall and Mock. So I don't know. I'd be interested. Who was Jimbo still the offensive coordinator then?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to say so.
Wow.
That would have been Jimbo and Muschamp, the coordinators.
Kind of want to just go watch the LSU Oklahoma game right now and see skip through it and see what we can find as far as
Jimbo's still there.
Jimbo is still there.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good guy to have coaching off that quarterback system then, no matter what it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I think we have gone well over the time.
Yes.
So
which is
I think
all too common occurrence.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up. But we'll see how tomorrow goes, and we'll be back at it. Okay, well, we should be settling into a regular time Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time starting next week. But we'll see y'all then, and roll tide.
Roll tide.